Hey, ladies and jellyfish. Welcome back to the On Air podcast. Today I'm super excited. I got a very special guest on. Some of you might know him from Tmnt or some other things as well, Mr. Roy Burdine.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great to be talking to you, sir. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, good to talk to you. Love to talk about Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, for sure. So for people who don't maybe know who you are or not too well, kind of explain what you do, what your role was on TMNT, and what you did there.
Yeah, so I was a supervising director on TMNT. Back at that time, though, that meant I was the only director. I directed all the episodes once I came in. Now, up front, I came into season 3. So the show was started off by Chuck Patton. He was the supervising director on season 1 and 2. And he sort of set everything up with Lloyd, Lloyd is the main guy, like creating and running the show. He worked directly with Peter Laird. And so when Chuck decided to leave, because it was a strange thing. It was set in New York, like nobody in animation hardly works in New York, at least in action animation back then. And here they were trying to do it. And so a lot of guys that worked on the show, we all worked freelance, because I worked on the show as a storyboard artist right from the first episode. And that's because I knew Chuck out here, and I had worked with him before, and he hired me to do boards right from the beginning. So you had to move to New York, which is, it's a lot. So I think Chuck had enough after 2 years, and he came back. And so I got lucky, and I got to go there and take his seat and continue on for the next 5 years until the end of the show.
Right. So for those who don't know, Chuck Patton did seasons 1 and 2, and then he sort of built the foundation, and then you came on as the second supervising director. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so basically what I did is a supervising director is sort of like oversee everything. So we'd, do the storyboards, the voice directing, editing. We cut together animatics of the show first before it goes overseas to the animation company. So I would, cut together the animatic. Then it would go out to the overseas animation. Once we get it back, then we would edit the color animation that comes back. Also have to give notes. It's a process you go through where your first pass sometimes is not that pretty, and you got to send a lot of notes as to what needs to be fixed. And then once that's all done, then we edit it, go in, do all the mix, which the sound effects, music, and everything, and then it's ready to go. So it's really just, like overseeing the entire process. But my biggest day-to-day thing would be designs and storyboards, overseeing all of that.
And I have questions for all of that. We'll get into that, absolutely. So before that, though, I want to hear about your start. Where did you originate from? How did you get your start in the industry? Just take us back to the secret origins.
Secret origins? Well, I got into animation in the mid-90s. It was just starting out, and I was lucky to meet a guy named Wominio. Actually, I met somebody at a studio that he was working at, and they hired me to do storyboard, like revision work on the original X-Men series, the one they're bringing back now, the 90s series. And then he had a new show starting up, which was Street Fighter. This was Will, and I met him because I was doing some revisions on X-Men, and then he hired me as a character designer on Street Fighter. So for a number of years, I actually was a designer. I did designs for the last few years 2 years of Street Fighter. It was a 2-season series, and then I actually went and did I think it's the last season of X-Men. It went from that studio. Fox took it to they wanted to start a new studio, so some of us moved over there, and when I moved over there, Street Fighter was not part of that deal, so they hired me to do the X-Men. So I got to do I'm pretty sure it's just the last season of the X-Men. So for quite a while, I mean, we did a Captain America series that never got on the air. It got stopped about 6 episodes in. We did the Silver Surfer, which was on the air for one season. We had done like 3 episodes of the second season, and then all of a sudden they bailed on that one. And so that studio is where I started. There were a lot of shows going on there. They had more than just the Marvel shows. So there was a lot of people there. And when I was character designing, after a few years, I felt like I wanted to do more. My goal was I wanted to be a director. I wanted to do what the guys that were making the shows did. And I actually told Will, at that time we were doing the Spider-Man show. What was that called? It's the one where he's in the weird costume.
Oh, is Spider-Man Unlimited?
Unlimited, yeah. I always see it as extremes. It's one of these weird things where they just attach an adjective. But yeah, I was working on that, and I asked Will, and Will said, "Well, if you wanna do what I do, you have to be a board artist. You have to do storyboards. People always need storyboards." And I had also felt at the time, it was like, how many shows can I design? If you think about that, it's like there's only so many shows on the air at a time, and there's only so many guys that can design those shows. They don't want the same guy designing every show. So eventually, people are going to be looking for someone else. I knew that job had a limited future. Anyway, so I took all that information and I started to storyboard. And once I started to storyboard, everybody really liked my storyboards. So I did that for a while. So I would be working in the day doing character designs and then freelancing storyboards for other shows. There was the Avengers show that we did where it's like none of the main Avengers, and it has like Tigra and Ant-Man, and they all wear armor, which was really silly. But it was good for me. It was my first chance doing boards. Silver Surfer, I did some boards, actually. That was the first one. And a bunch of others. They had other shows that weren't Marvel. But so that's how I got into doing boards. And I did that for a few years. And one day, the lady that runs the studio, she called me up on my, I get a message on my phone, come over to my office, and I want to talk to you about a project. So I'm like, oh, that's weird. So I come over, and she has a show that they're doing. It's a co-production. So a lot of the stuff that they did, they would be co-productions with another country. And she hired me to be the producer, co-producer, I should say, not producer, but co-producer with Bruno Bianchi, who was the producer in France, and the show was Inspector Gadget and the Gadgetinis, which we did like 53 episodes of the show, like an entire series. And it may have aired here once eventually somewhere on cable, because I looked it up and it looks like it did, but it never aired. The deal with those kind of shows is they make a deal to air it in Europe, and then it's going to air on Fox, and then both groups pay. It's a way for them to everybody to get a show, but everybody can also not pay as much money. But by the time before we were actually done with the show, the guy who ran the company, so he was doing Fox Family Channel at the time, and he had done it. He had bought it from someone else, made a deal. This is Hayam Saban. He made a deal to run this network, but in that deal was basically a buyout clause. After he had done it for 2 years, he could force them to buy him out. The deal was with Disney, and he did that. So we weren't even quite done with Gadget, actually, when that happened. So the whole studio got shut down because Disney, has their own studio. They took the Gadget show and they put us in another studio out in another part of town, and we finished that up. So that's kind of how I got into doing bigger and better stuff. Was I did the Gadgetini show, and I also did another show, same process with the same people in France, which was like Jason and the Heroes of Mount Olympus, which is absolutely never aired in the U.S. The reason Gadget didn't air is they buried it, and Disney was a lot of times what happens in animation or even regular television is if you have a change in the studio heads, they kind of like take everything that the other people were doing and they just sort of like get rid of it, right? Because it's not their thing.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that later with a certain episode that couldn't air in TMNT.
I know. Yeah. So, yeah, and when I was working on the last season I shouldn't say last season, but technically, like, Gadgetini is 2 seasons because it's 26 and 26. So, I mean, it is the last season, but I started doing the boards for Ninja Turtles. And that's what just kind of timed out. Like, I finished that job. I had been freelancing boards for Turtles for a good while. I found out Chuck was going to leave, and I talked to them about coming out there, and it all worked out. So I went from there was a little dip there. I finished Gadgetini. I went to Warner Brothers and worked on a straight-to-video movie for a little bit, and then I got the job in New York, and I went out there. And then, as they say, the rest is history. We spent a lot of years doing Ninja Turtles. And then I came back and did like a million other things, but that was kind of like what got me going.
Did you always knew you'd be an artist, like as a kid, or did you want to be like a fireman or something like that?
Always was an artist. Always knew I was going to be an artist. It was always my goal. I mean, technically my goal was I was going to be a comic book artist. That was my thing. I wanted to draw comic books. But and I did some. I did some Marvel and different books, starting out right out of college. But the thing with that was, it's something you do when you're like, 20 years old. It doesn't pay very well. And, so by like 22, I had a kid. I needed to, I was married. I had to get a job, that paid a lot more money. And I had met these guys at the studio where they did Street Fighter and the original X-Men. And that's I just switched over. So it just once I got into animation, that's a lot of work. I couldn't keep doing comic book stuff, and comic books is also weird because it changes a lot. The editorial staff changes. People that I was working with in the Spider-Man group, they all got let go, and then they hired other people to run Spider-Man, and those people didn't even know me, so they didn't even they weren't even taking my calls. So just kind of one thing rolled into the other, and once I started doing animation, just kind of took over. I did do my own comic for a little bit in the 90s, but what I found was that it's just so much work, like to do an entire comic book, and then you're working full time. But that's hard enough. But then you have to sell it.
Do you still have that old comic?
Yeah, I have copies of it. Yeah, I have copies of it. It was called Dead Force. I did one issue I self-published, and then I hooked up with Antarctic Press, and they did 2 issues. And then two were all that was ever done, because it was like, that's when I realized, I'm like, wow, like you can make a comic and that's hard enough, but then you have to have like someone to sell it. Because it's a lot of work for one guy to go out there. A lot of the indie guys that have been successful, you'll notice, they did it for years and years and years and years consistently, so that they were able to maintain like the product, have it out there all the time, every month or every other month, but on a very, regular schedule. So they were able to build an audience, but there was no way I could maintain that kind of thing, working full time and all that.
Yeah, that story sort of reminds me of sort of Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, sort of a duo. They worked hard for many years, and then they got their golden idea. Did you work a lot with those two, and how were they like?
Well, when we did Ninja Turtles, Kevin Eastman had sold out his half of Ninja Turtles, so Peter Laird was running the whole thing. And the idea with Ninja Turtles Tmnt series was, well, we can get into that, but the answer is I didn't work directly with him. Lloyd worked with him. So Lloyd would go out at the beginning of each season. He would go out to Peter's house, which is like some farm, spend a week, and they would break all the stories. And then Lloyd would come back, talk about the stories, and they would start writing episodes. So I didn't directly work with him, but he was super involved in our show. It was his show. A lot of times it came down to, like, if there were things that the toy company or the network wanted to do that he didn't agree with, his position was always, there doesn't have to be a Ninja Turtle show. Like, I don't have to do this show. He's got plenty of money. He wanted to do the show that he always wanted to do, and so that's what this show represented. Because they felt that the original one that everyone loves it's cool, but it's not actually, if you read their original comics, it's not their comic. Their comic's not silly. They're not eating pizza,
Right.
It's a whole different thing. So that's what this show was, and that's how we worked with him. But so he was very involved, especially in the story aspect and working directly with Lloyd on all of that stuff.
Right. So I've seen a lot of the behind the scenes, like director's cuts with Peter Laird, and he was super involved in the show. And it's just my interpretation, but I feel like he had a lot more. It was a lot more of his interpretation of the Ninja Turtles compared to the '87 show, which was a lot more childish and more like toy oriented and stuff like that.
Yeah, from my understanding is they didn't really have pretty much any involvement with the original show. They sold it and somebody made it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see in the '87 show a lot. I don't watch it that often, but you can tell they were sort of pandering to the hypes of the time. Like in the '90s, they did the Red Sky seasons with to emulate Batman,
Yeah, right.
that sort of thing. But back to 2003. Now it's the 20-year anniversary this month, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Do you ever look back on the show and think like, "Wow, I made that," or certain episodes or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, of all the stuff that I've done, it's really one of my favorite things, because beyond just the show that, everybody sees on the air, there was like the group of us making this show and all the crazy times that we went through for those 5 years to make this show. And it was a lot of work, everybody was just killing themselves. And I had a lot to do with like coming in and seeing how we could make the production work better, basically. And so that was a lot of work. And so it was we had a camaraderie, it was fun. Like, it was a bunch of us in that studio making the show. And I was just talking to Abraham, who was the super producer and production manager once I got there. He came in because he was a friend of mine. I told him about it, and he got the job and came out also. And we were both like, yeah, that was a special time. In the business, you just have never had that kind of camaraderie and that kind of relationship with your coworkers. And we were all just starting out. We're all young. We're getting to make this crazy show. So. Yeah, it's one of my favorite. I mean, I probably would say it's my favorite experience in animation. It wasn't. I wouldn't have said that when I was doing it. I might have said at the time, "Oh no, this is hell." This is hell on earth. But
the end sort of justified the means. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Exactly.
Do you have any like war stories from like interesting memories from working on the show?
Well, my big thing was when I came in, they were doing storyboards where they freelance. That's what I was doing, right? I was freelancing storyboards. Everybody that does action animation is basically out here in California, Los Angeles area. And of course, Chuck was from here, so Chuck went out there to do the show, and he's freelancing the work out to everybody out here. And that was the system when I came in season 3. But it's really a tough system to get exactly what you want, because really a lot of those guys that are freelancing, they have jobs, and so the work that you're getting is not necessarily their best, right? Because it's the work that they're able to do when they come home at night, and storyboarding is a lot of work. So it was difficult, and going through the 3rd season, I felt like there's got to be a better way. And so I came up with a plan and so what I noticed is when I got there, there was a crew like I've never seen before. It's like, I don't know the exact number, 5 or 6 guys working in the bullpen doing revisions. And, normally on a show you have maybe 1 or 2 revisionists, and I was like, this is a lot of manpower just to do revisions. And they were all good artists, like in their own right. Didn't have a lot of experience. For most of them, it was their first job or, one of their first. But I just saw the work that they were doing and I was like, I feel like we could do the boards with these guys. There's enough guys here to create our own board crew and just do it here. And they'd love to do it, So at the end of season 3, I had them do, basically, I handed out some of the freelance to them to try it out, and the results were really good. And so then I went in and I basically pitched this idea, like, let's stop sending this work all over the place and running around chasing down all these people with storyboards and having to fix it. Let's do it all here with these guys. And they were all for it, they went for it. And so then that's why for me, I feel like season 4 on, it gets a lot better. I think it showed in the episodes. So that's a big one. It's just kind of like seeing how the situation was working and figuring out how we could make it work better. Back then we used to do shows in 4 weeks, which is insane. Like now it's basically always 6 weeks minimum. A lot of things have changed. The Tmnt was kind of coming out of the old system. That's why we only had one director, which was me. Nowadays, when I work on a show, we have a supervising director, but then the supervising director has 2 or 3 directors underneath him, and they split up the episodes in amongst the directors. So there's a lot more manpower. You can put a lot more time and energy into making a good show. We just had less, the old system didn't work that way. So yeah, they weren't in the studio, they were just doing it and then they would send it in. So you're not having a day-to-day direct exchange, with the artists that are making the show. You're basically getting their roughs, giving them notes, sending it back. They do the board, they finish it, they send it in. Now you have to fix it up. A lot of times that result was not the greatest, what you would get back. And that's why I was wanting to move out of doing it that old way. And plus I also had come from out here where that new system of having, your board people in-house and directors, that was already happening out here. So I knew about that and I wanted to institute that. That's where I got the idea from. And yeah, like I said, it was just lucky because those guys were great, They're all out here still working on these shows. Almost everybody has moved to California after Ninja Turtles and is having a nice career out here doing cool shows.
Yeah, it was surprising that you said they were in New York. I guess they wanted to immerse you guys in the setting of the show.
Yeah, right. Well, it was because it was 4 kids, and 4 kids, their big thing was Pokemon. Like they're one of these companies that takes the Japanese animated shows and then they revoice them and repackage them with the music and everything for air over here. They did. There's a bunch they did. Can't remember the name. The one where the kid like plays with cards. That was Yu-Gi-Oh. That was huge.
Yeah, that was also one Lloyd Goldfine worked on as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, Lloyd kind of oversaw a lot of the stuff there. I think maybe all of it. So when they did Ninja Turtles, it was a whole new thing because it wasn't going to be done overseas. Like somebody wasn't doing it in Japan or Korea or wherever, and then it was going to come here and be revoiced. They were actually making the show. So they weren't really set up for that. They had never done that before. It was a whole new thing for them. And that's why, the people that were working in-house on the show, the designers, the revisionists and all that, they lived in New York. They were guys that were trying to start out an animation career out there.
Do you know how much the budget was for each episode?
Man, you know what? I don't even remember. I don't even remember a ballpark, to be honest. I mean, I just know that at the time in the business, the average was 250,000. I want to say,
That's crazy because it looks so good. And
but
nowadays,
it's kind of
Family
like
Guy,
broken down.
yeah, Family Guy's like $1 million an episode, and the
Oh, I
animation's
know.
like
It's
way less detailed than TMNT.
Yeah, I know. The overseas studios were putting a lot of work into it. But yeah, and it also, you say 250 is an average budget at the time. I don't know if that was our budget. I mean, for all I know, ours probably was less. But that 250 isn't just the animation; it's everything. So you're really only talking about, maybe 75 to 100,000 goes to the actual animation. you know.
Right. There's
So
writers, music,
um,
everything, right?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know the numbers. I mean, it wasn't really my thing. I'm sure at the time I had some idea, but it's been a long time, and I'm definitely not. It's not something I really was involved in or focused on. Other than trying, there were a lot of things that I did too to try and save money. To cost
Hmm.
cut. So one thing that happened on the show, and it happens on every show, is that they do a first season, maybe even the first two, and they have a certain budget. But if that thing keeps going, they try and cut down the budget every single season.
Right.
And they were doing that on Ninja Turtles. So I was trying to find ways, even to save money. You know, um, I even think, like the boarding, bringing the things in house was a part of that. Uh, Eventually, we even brought the voice acting in house, where I just took over directing the voice actors myself, because that studio was geared towards directing the voice actors. The voice actors came in, they had a full recording studio in the studio, and that's all because that was really their bread and butter, right? Was revoicing animated shows from Japan and different places like that. So that was a big part of that studio, was recording. And we had a voice director in California for the first three seasons. And then that was another thing where, well, we're going to do another season, and they're looking to, cut the budget, save money, basically. Maybe save money is more how they're looking at it. Cut the budget sounds a little more extreme, but it's both of those things.
Yeah, I always got that impression because, like, in the first season, especially in the first few episodes, there's this lot of like silhouetted shots and like interesting. I don't know if that was because of the budget or if they wanted to make it stand out. But as the show went on, especially like in the last two seasons, you can tell like maybe the animation budget dropped a little bit.
Well, in the last couple seasons, when we went to fast forward, and then we went to
Back to the
back
sewer.
to the sewer, those are a result of kind of like what you alluded to earlier, is that we got to a point where the shows were really fun to do. They were like just cool, straight action, and they got kind of harsher and harsher. We beheaded the Shredder, and which I never understood why they were upset about that. It's like the Shredder is a robot body. It's not him. I mean, what I mean? It's just you're cutting off a robot's head, really, even though it looks like you're cutting off a human's head. But we did that, and we had the whole, Baxter Stockman decomposing episode, and
Right.
basically the network was getting kind of annoyed, and I think everyone was kind of bothered by it. And so those seasons were kind of partially a result of that, and also a result of, in terms of fast forward, and why we left the original like time period, was also the toy company wanted to have a new line. They were like, we need to do something new, freshen up the show so that we can sell a new line of toys. And we actually pitched a bunch of stuff, but the future idea was what they came up with. That's what they came back with. And so we wanted to make the show lighter. So the look of the show changed. That really didn't have anything to do with budget as much as it was just we wanted to give it a different look. They wanted it to be lighter. They wanted it to be more fun. There also came a point where, if you notice in the earlier seasons, we did a lot of like split camera stuff and like really cool
Yeah.
panel type work. And at a certain point, the overseas studio was like, look, can we make a deal not to do that anymore? Because if there's two, so sometimes we would have two panels on screen, right? Like I love to do this trick, and you'll see like in 3 and 4, I think we did this a lot more. And in the first two, when I was boarding, we would do this where you would have the same action happening, but you'd have two panels and you would be seeing it from two different angles.
Yeah.
It's just a cool thing. But the overseas studio for them, that's like having two scenes because they have to do the whole scene planning for each one of those panels. They got to have a background, they got to have the characters, it's got to be animated. So for them, it's as much work as two whole scenes. And they basically, you know, negotiated their way out of having any of those anymore. It just became a thing of like, no, no more of that. And the other thing was, you'll notice in, again, I want to say through season 4, there was a much greater depth of the color treatment, right? That we would go
For
into,
sure.
like, if they're going underground, it's a subtle thing, but you'll see the colors change, right? It's a more muted tone. It's,
Hmm.
we go into, one of the things I love to do is like you go into someone like Bishop's lab, and it's a red color lighting scheme. And so we recolor the
Mm.
characters with a, they're like as if they're lit by this red light. And we were doing a lot of that stuff because and then when you watch the show, even though a lot of that is really subtle, like you may not even pick up on it if you're not paying attention, but it really, gives a depth of atmosphere to the show. And that was another one where they were like, you guys are just going too crazy with the colors. Like there's just, because that's another thing. They have to deal with all of that, right? It's more work for them. It's easier for them to do it like where the characters are always in the same color. So we had to stop doing special colors. We could only have day and night. That was it. And then when we got to fast forward along those same lines, I was like, you know what I want to do since we're changing it? I want to make it like a single color palette, like old fashioned style, like Scooby Doo or something, where it's just one color scheme and they're always in that color scheme. Whether it's day or night, you really don't see a difference.
Right.
The atmosphere, the location they're in will inform that it's night or day or whatever. So we did that too. It's a part of simplifying. So that's another reason why those 2 seasons are simpler, is that we were also getting pushback from the overseas studio. I mean, I guess technically, yes, that is because of budget, because you had brought up maybe that was a budget thing, but it is because they're only getting paid so much money, and we were really giving them a lot of extra work to try and make the show like, it's the best we could. So that's how things got simplified. But I didn't want to simplify it in a way that it would look like a cheap version, like, oh, we're just cheaping out. Like, it's like, well, so let's just reapproach it artistically. Plus, we're in a new location. So if you notice in Fast Forward, we inked all the backgrounds. In the originals, they were just the way, the background designs, and we paint them. The designs were essentially drawn in pencil. Back then, we still drew stuff on paper.
Hmm.
And once we went to the future, I was like, well, let's do everything. Let's ink everything. So everything has a hard line and has it's just because we have to separate the worlds. So then, getting into like interesting stories. So that was another thing. They changed everything to the point to where, we were doing season 5 when they decided to do this. So we finished season 5, which is a really cool season. That's the one where they like get the power ups and
Hmm. Hmm.
they get the designs on their bodies and stuff. And then they just kind of shelved that and had us go right into doing the fast forward thing. So it takes us about a year just to do like a season of 26 episodes. In terms of like the board process, it's longer when you consider that, then we have to wait for the animation to come back. I have to mix the show, edit it, and get it ready for air. It's much longer than that. But we get fast forward on the air, and by the time we get towards the end of fast forward, the TMNT CGI animated movie was going to be coming out. I
Hmm.
don't know if you remember that. I remember what, maybe
2007. Yeah.
2007. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So then the toy company's like, oh, you know what? This big movie's coming out and it's going to be huge, and we want toys based on the movie, and the show needs to reflect the movie. It's like, wait a minute, but you just sent us to the future to sell some other toys, which
Oh, is that why they got the pupils in Fast in Back to the Sewer?
I'm not sure about the pupils. I don't even remember, but but it is why they go back to New York, and it maintains a sensibility of fast forward. You know, like we applied a lot of what we were doing in fast forward to the new show just to keep them kind of consistent, because we jumped into the future. They claimed they wanted to sell these toys. They hardly sold. Those toys were on sale for such a short amount of time. I have a bunch of them in a box because having designed so many of them, I was like, wow, these are really cool, because I designed a lot of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, they went on sale and went off sale like real quick. And then it was a rush to get together something that would reflect the movie more. And so everything was out the window, come back. And then that was kind of weird, because they were like, well, we want to be in New York, we want to be back into the sewer. And then they came up with the idea that, but also they're going to be like in the internet. It's like, what? They're going to be in the internet?
Get cyber bits. Yeah, it's like Tron.
Tron was my whole thing with that. I was like, well, if they're going to be in there, it's going to be like Tron. Let's try and do like streaks, the cars, and do all that kind of stuff. And the cyber shredder. I mean, I like the cyber shredder thing. That was kind of cool.
I like it too. Yeah, a lot of people don't like it, but I like the design as well. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I mean, it was interesting, and so that's why we ended up with that. It wasn't all about budget. It was just about a lot of like the toy company changing their mind, trying to promote around a particular thing, and basically we're just being pulled left and right based on their whims. And also at that point, ironically, you notice that we're changing things. We're going to the future, then we're going back, and those are Toy Story decisions. But at that point, I guess Peter Laird was going along with it. He was a lot more like resistant, I think, in the earlier seasons, But I think maybe he had done a lot of what he wanted to do, by the time we got to the later seasons. So, but he was always involved all the way till the end.
That's interesting. Yeah, I just want to touch on one thing you said before with the lighting. It was interesting, like in season 3 in like Worlds Collide, when they were getting dissected by Bishop, you can see like the downward lighting on them, and it shows in their skin color. It's like more saturated, and I always thought that looked so cool. It was like you could have just not included that, but just that little detail.
Yeah. And those are special models that we have to make and send to them to get that effect. And we were doing a lot of that back then. And yeah, I think it really works. When we did the movie, the
Turtles Forever.
Turtles Forever, yeah. When we did that, now that one, I was like, okay, well, it's a DVD, right? It's a movie, even though the way they did it is they go, it's going to be a movie, but it's basically going to be 3 episodes, right? We're giving you a budget to do 3 episodes. Mm-hmm. And then those episodes are just going to be cobbled into a movie, but they also can air as individual episodes. So it wasn't like we were getting some big budget to make a movie. We were really just getting 3 extra episodes.
Oh, that's interesting.
They were gonna...
Yeah, so is the movie cut up into like 22-minute segments?
Yes.
Okay, never knew that.
Yeah, that was really towards the end when we were doing that. So there was a lot of... That's why there was a lot of like changes at that time. But, color-wise, what I wanted to do in that movie was get back to doing the colors the way we used to do it. And I even gave the Turtles... So basically what we used to have was, in the original seasons 1 through 5, you have your base color on the Turtles, and then you have a shadow color, right? So that they have some volume.
Right.
And then when we did Fast Forward and we did Back to the Sewer, we went with like this more sleek design where you don't have the shadow. So when we did the movie, I wanted 2 tones and a shadow, which they did, so I think it looks much cooler. There's much more depth,
That's a layer to it.
Yeah, exactly. So that helps, and I thought that looked really cool. I really liked the movie, actually. I thought it came out really good, and it was a lot of fun, when you saw it on screen. So
yeah, it's interesting to see.
It was a good way to go out.
Yeah, it's good to see a lot of fans kind of going back to it now that it's been a while since it came out.
Yeah,
sort
totally.
of revisiting it. So I really want to delve into this like season by season, because obviously you came on in season 3 to 7, so you were included in a lot of the like interesting aspects of the show. So why don't we start with season 3? How was that like? Did you come up with the idea for Bishop?
Well, Bishop is like my personal favorite character because in the two-parter where the, the the Triceratons attack, Bishop is like this character that was like a government agent. He didn't really have much of a part. It was a really kind of like small thing. He really wasn't supposed to be anything important. And I liked that. I thought he was a cool character. And so that's the one character that I got to have the most input on. He's kind of like my character.
I love that because he's
because
my favorite character. He's my favorite character
yeah,
in all of TMNT. He's like so cool. He's like so badass, but he has such a simple design, and it's just like it's amazing.
yeah. I thought I was just immediately into him, and I saw a lot of potential. And also he had a lot of leeway because he wasn't. Well, he was just kind of an open character. He wasn't a character from the comics or anything. He was just something completely made up as a really just a background character on the show, and that gave me license, to really like go off on him. So I just wrote a ton of stuff about this character. I was like, oh, he should be this, he should be that, and I wrote all of this stuff out, and I gave it to Lloyd, and Lloyd was like, yeah, this is cool. We could do a lot of this.
He was like
So like
abducted
that
by
whole
aliens, and he wants to create a super soldier race and all that stuff.
yeah. Well, I had part of my pitch was that he's involved because his whole thing is to fight aliens, right? Protect the Earth. That's what his group does. And so I was like, well, he should have a base. His base should be Area 51. All this kind of stuff. They came up with, later when we got to the scripts, that's where the idea that he had been abducted and stuff came from. But this whole like alien hunter Area 51 thing, this was something that I had pitched, and then, Lloyd went with it, which was awesome. So I always loved that character. And when it came to fast forward, it's the same thing. I was like, well, if we're going to go to the future, everything should be different, right? Everything should be turned on its head. So how about the future? Bishop's the president, and he's a good guy, right? Because in the future, there's aliens everywhere. And Bishop, ironically, is the guy who created peace between Earth and the humans, and I mean, Earth and the aliens, and that's why he's the president, and that was all my idea, and they totally went for it. So I was like,
Yeah,
awesome.
that was like the best part of Fast Forward for me. It was such an interesting episode, and to see Stockman come back as like this brain squid, it was crazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I always loved Stockman uh, in all his iterations. He's a great
Right.
character.
So we'll get into all that, but just for season 3, I want to get into a couple episodes and hear your thoughts. Just a couple of my favorites. So, do you remember Hunt on the Run?
So yeah, no, Hunt on the Run is like it's one of my favorites. Because I was thinking, well, I know, Same as It Never Was is definitely one of my favorite, but Hunt on the Run is my other one, and Hunt on the Run is my favorite because
The storyboarding?
well, what happened was around this time, right? You'll notice some of the shows they get really action oriented, right? So Hunt on the Run is like a whole action thing, right? But it wasn't really written that way. It wasn't. I forget what was the issue, but it wasn't really like working. I went and rewrote all this stuff when we were working on that. I sent it to Lloyd, and Lloyd was like, "Okay, I'll take this stuff," and then he did a rewrite on the episode, and then when we boarded it, and then I got it back. I just started pushing to like, let's just follow the action. Like, because in shows, they spend a lot of time talking, but it's supposed to be an action show. So I started really just narrowing down just the action. Let's follow the train of the action. So I had a lot of input on Hunt on the Run, and it's where I really, like, it was my whole idea that Hun's got this car that can destroy anything, and it could just drive through stuff, which ironically is, I ripped that off from myself. I had done, a friend of mine was doing stuff for DC in the 90s, and I wanted to do a series with him, right? Legends of the Dark Knight, and I had this idea. So I was going to have the Batram, right? And the Batram was Batman's car. It was exactly like Hun's, right? It was basically like this impenetrable tank that would just smash through everything. Ours was a future Batman story, and they were going to do it, but it just never got done. And there is a page. So I think issue 50, there's like, they just show one pagers of different artists' ideas for that, and ours is in there. I forget what we called it. Anyway, I stole that idea from myself, and I was like, oh, let's give Batman's car to Hun.
Yeah, the one with like the triangle in the front.
Yeah, because Hun's indestructible, so he should have an indestructible car. and so one of the things that happens when we're doing the shows is a lot of the scripts for these shows are really long. Like it's a 22-minute show, and we'd be getting scripts that are like 35 pages or more sometimes. And it's just too much material. This is actually always the thing in every animated show, is that there's always this like push and pull between like the writing and the storytelling, and they tend to always write too much, and it always comes into conflict. Like, you guys have to shorten the scripts are too long. So what happens though is when you get a script and you pay these guys to board out the entire script, so at the end you have a really long episode. I forget the episode, it'll probably come to me, but there was an episode that was so long that it literally could have been broken into 2 episodes. We had to cut that much out. I even suggested that, but you can't do that because of the way budgets work. It's like, this whole episode, this is 2 episodes, we just add a little bit of action and we'd have 2. But so you have to when you're going to do the animatic, you have to edit it down, to be 22 minutes. So, sometimes you're talking about taking out, 4 minutes worth of material, 2 minutes. 2 minutes is a lot, even though it doesn't sound like it. It's a lot of material. And so again, when I got into cutting the animatic for Hun on the Run, I have to make cuts. I have to get it down to time. My preference in the cutting is towards action. And, one of the things that takes a lot of time is dialogue. So I'm cutting dialogue, and I'm just trying to narrow the focus of this thing down to action, visual action, which I did a lot of that on that episode. And so it's one of the reasons I like it. I had a lot of input, but I also like it because it's an action episode, which is what I wanted. And I did that on a few of them. So the one where they go to the future, which I think that's the best one, and I always see. I'm very pleased that I think universally this is considered the best one, right? Is the one where they're all messed up and, it's the future. I think Donnie goes to the future, right? He ends up in the future, and he sees his brothers are all different and they're not friends anymore, and they're going to go fight the Shredder. It was the hugest script. There was so much stuff in this script. Like, there's a whole storyline with the Utroms in that script that's not even in the show.
Can we hear about it?
I don't remember what it was. It was just there were just a lot of scenes that had more, like a whole, almost like another part of the story. But we had to cut a lot, and like at that time I was really cutting towards action. And so, if you notice at the end, like, they have this huge battle.
Yeah. With that famous clip where Raph is on Leo and everything.
Yeah. We really went for it. Like, and I cut and geared everything towards the action, to keep it moving, and I really loved the way that episode came out. And then the other one, I think it's Bishop's Gambit, where
that was the next one I was going to ask you about.
They're on the train, and the Bishop gets away on the train, and they have this huge fight on the train. So
I think the train fight, I think, was on Hun on the Run, and then Bishop's Gambit's where he captures Splinter.
Yes. Okay, I'm getting them confused. Yeah, well, okay, so going back to Hun on the Run, just to get to my point on the time thing and the action, if you notice in Hun on the Run, the last act is a fight. They're just fighting for an
Yeah,
entire
it's like
act.
3 whole minutes. It's amazing.
It's the greatest thing ever. Something I always wanted to do, and we just did it.
And it's so
We
cool because Bishop can take on all these guys. He's taking on Karai, Hun, the Turtles, and it's so cool. I read somewhere. I don't know if you know who the Edwin Nabris is. I think he was a storyboard artist.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
Ed did a lot of stuff on that.
Yeah, and he said there was like hundreds of storyboards for that one fight scene. Is that true? How much like storyboards go into that sort of thing?
A lot. That's one of the things I'm saying. Is like, well, the boards will be huge, and we have to pare them down. And Ed was just this incredible action storyboard artist, and he was so fast. It's a lot of work to do storyboards, but of course with everybody it's different. Different artists. Some people are faster than others, but Ed was the fastest I've ever seen in my life, and his stuff was really good. Yeah, so he boarded a ton of stuff for that whole ending, and then I, was my preference in the editing was to trim the show down so that it kept moving, and then and they got to where that whole ending was a fight, which I loved. And then what happened was when we got to the same as it never was, I got in trouble.
What do you
was
mean?
really mad at me. Well, because I kept editing the shows to be like, I was just cutting a lot of nonsense, like, and I just wanted a cool action show, which I feel like is what everybody wants out of the Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles should be fighting, it should be a show about fighting.
Right.
Cool action, not guys standing around and talking,
For Same as It Never Was, did you sacrifice a lot of the ending fight scene for the more dialogue parts like Splinter or April and all that stuff?
In that one, it had more to do with, like I said, there was like essentially another storyline, and I know it had something to do with Utroms. I don't remember exactly what, but there was like a whole other storyline in there, like a subplot or something. But it was really not pertinent to the main story. It just got us into a certain fight, and it just seemed it wasn't necessary, So yeah, I don't remember. In terms of dialogue between the characters, probably narrowing things down, just getting it to the point for sure. But after that one, he was like, all right, you got to stop cutting out all of the stories.
Right. So how did you deal with censorship on the show? There's a lot of episodes, and we'll get into a lot of them, but like starting off with Same as It Never Was, or even like Insane in the Membrane. And some of these episodes, like even in Bishop's Gambit, there's a scene where Bishop gets hanged on the hook. How much did you guys have to, like, especially being on 4Kids, which is supposedly supposed to be censoring a lot of the stuff for kids? How much was it? How difficult was it to do what you really wanted to do?
Honestly, we didn't really have didn't have a lot of problems with the censors. I don't. That's why we're getting so out of control. Like, they weren't really telling us anything, so we were just having fun. And then later on, I think there was a shift or something in who was doing. I kind of want to say that at a certain point, from what I remember, is there was a person who was the head of that, and then somebody new came in. And when the new people came in was when they were like, "Oh, this is crazy! Like, what are you doing?" But that was way later on. Like once you got to the Stockman episode, that was later on. So early on, they didn't really object to anything anything substantial that I can remember. You get a few minor things here and there, but for the most part, there were no issues.
There's two episodes that come to mind, which is Insane in the Membrane, which was the Stockman episode, and then one that got scrapped entirely, which was the Nightmares Recycled, which was Hun and the Garbage Man. Can you tell us a bit about that one? Because there's not a lot of information about it out there.
What is that one called?
Nightmares Recycled?
Get animated? I remember. Well, that's weird. I do remember a Hun and Garbage Man episode. Is that one that?
Yeah, they only got to the script
You said that
phase.
never aired?
Yeah, it never got made, even animated. It was just the script, and then it was in season 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's probably why. Like, I probably had not much to do with it because it got stopped before it even got made. Because at script stage, I'm not as involved. Like, they give me so they start with a breakdown, then it goes to first draft and all that. But really, once we get into the like fast pace of like cranking out a season, my time gets to where I can't even read that stuff because I'm so busy. Not to mention, I also have found with any show, if you are reading the like early drafts, it gets confusing when because now you've read 3 drafts of this thing and all this stuff has changed. And you want to just know the episode that you're making, because sometimes you can be remembering stuff that isn't, well, that's from an earlier draft, So yeah, anything in scripts usually would work. Like I would be more, I would give some input here and there earlier on, but once we got really running in the season, I wouldn't even have time to do that kind of stuff. I also was really into doing that. I would say like early on when I first got there. Of course, I'm all gung-ho and I'm doing a lot more of that. And then when we switched over to fast forward, then again, I put in a lot of ideas. And so it was fun because when I did have time to do that, Lloyd was very open-minded to my ideas. And so fortunately, like a lot of them got used, which I loved. But yeah, so I probably didn't... I remember the Garbage Man, but maybe that's an earlier episode. I don't really remember having anything to do with Garbage Man that didn't get made. Because even the one with Baxter, like we made the whole episode. They just held it back because whoever took over kind of freaked out,
Yeah, for sure. So which season would be your favorite? Because for me, it's season 4 for sure. You got the introduction of Bishop more, and you get Karai's Shredder, and Leo's on his arc and everything. What do you think about season 4, and was it your favorite season?
Probably. I would say, in terms of the shows and overall, that's probably my favorite because, it's got a lot of, like... It's a time when we were changing things and, for us making the show, and we got to do a lot of cool shows, and I was, like, going crazy doing action, which I loved. So yeah, I would say that's my favorite, but I also a favorite for me, just for a different reason, would be Fast Forward, and that's just because I had a lot to do with what went into this show. Stories, the world that they entered, the look of the show. So that was all a lot of fun to do. So from behind the scenes, I liked that a lot. But yeah, I think just in general, season 4 had all the really cool episodes, the coolest episodes, I would say.
So what are your thoughts on like Prodigal Son or Dragon's Brew, Good Genes, all that stuff, or Tale of Master Yoshi as well?
Oh man, is Tale of Master Yoshi about his master?
Yeah, him and his brother, basically his friend Mashimi.
Oh, okay. The one I'm thinking of is there's one with
the ancient one.
It's Splinter's master, but it's like a tale where Splinter is still a rat.
Yeah, that's the one.
And Splinter's master, we put him in like Bruce Lee's motorcycle outfit, the one from
yeah.
Death.
Yeah, and he also gets the Kill Bill sort of yellow jumpsuit as well.
Yeah, that's the one. That's what I'm talking about. That's the
right. The Bruce Lee version.
She has it in Kill Bill because it was Bruce Lee's suit in Game of Death. So we put him in that. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, there's a lot of episodes where there's so many cool things. They all run together because, when we're making it's like 7 days a week. I would work 14 to 16 hours a day on that show. It was really insane.
Wow.
I was really burnt out when we got to the end. I was burnt out before the end, but, I had to keep going. But, so like a lot of those, I don't remember a lot of specifics about them. Like I say, the things that stand out to me are we did a lot of cool fighting and with Splinter's master. We got to make him into sort of a Bruce Lee type character. That was fun. My main memories of them really sort of like my memories are less of like what you watch as the episode and more all the production that went into making it, working on the storyboards, working with the artists,
for sure,
editing the animatics, and so it all just becomes like this huge thing. Most of them, if you tell me, if you remind me, I'll remember what the shows exactly were. But a lot of them don't have. I don't have a lot of specific memories, I guess you would say, about them.
So did you
Yeah.
deal with the executives at all, and or was that more Lloyd's department?
Yeah, that's really Lloyd's things. Lloyd is dealing with Peter. He's dealing with the toy company, the network. You know, uh, he deals with all the writers, and then he deals with me because he's still like, even though I'll take once I get approve a design or a background, it would still go up to him to make sure, if he had any notes.
So you were more in the production side. He was more pre. Like you didn't work with the writers at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't work with the writers really. Like he would be the writer that I would work with, in any way. Like I said, that's mostly in breaking down early on. Oh, we're doing these episodes, and here's like ideas of what they are, and I might have ideas about them, so I'll write out, certain things. But yeah, mainly I would have a finished script from a writer. I wouldn't even have any interaction with the writer.
And I have to ask on behalf of all the TMNT fans, whose idea was the pupils in Back to the Sewer?
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Was that more because of the movie, or was it just a creative decision?
I don't even remember that they had pupils. Jeez. Let me look it up. TMNT. This was Back to the Sewer. I don't know.
Yeah, they got the eyeballs. I guess they wanted to make them look more like friendly or something.
I do, yeah, I do remember that they got eyeballs. I don't remember specifically why. Yeah, let's see them here with their eyeballs. I'm really not sure why we had that. I don't know if that's something that they asked for. Um, like you say, because of the CGI movie, or how that happened. Does seem weird though. Now that I look at it.
Yeah, I just had to get that out of the way.
Yeah, it's a minor detail. I don't even remember if there was a specific reason for it, or how that came about. Because of course, they should just have white eyes.
Yeah. So you work with the voice actors as well.
Yeah.
So what was that like? How did you direct? Did you direct them at all? And who was like the best and worst? And do you have any experiences to share?
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly which season. Maybe it was four, maybe it was five. But I started just directing. Like I say, when I came on, we were working with a voice director in California, and then we started up a new season. That was one of the things where they could save money, right? Is, well, we don't really have to have a voice director extra because I'm there, And an unusual thing about Turtles was most of the time we had storyboards when we recorded, which is not a normal thing in animation. Generally, you're recording everything in advance, right? And then if I'm going to start working on a show, an episode, they give me the voice track, right? I've already got it, and then I'm working with it. But the way we did Turtles, it wasn't done like that. The guys did the boards, and so I had boards when I went in to record. So I had a really decent idea of what was happening, and what we needed out of the voice actors. It was
So
more direct.
so that helps you a lot more.
Yeah, totally. And so then we switched over, and I was doing it, and you know, honestly, the recording of the show is like one of the most fun things I've ever done in animation. It's
Yeah.
just it's kind of backbreaking because you're in the middle of production, and then you've got to run over to the studio. But run over, in their case, the studio was literally just down the hall, so that's one reason you could do this. And just spend hours, recording the episodes. You just, but being in the booth with the voice actors is so much fun. It's just everybody is just having a blast. you know, uh, Doing the voices, making jokes, having a good time. It's really a lot of fun. I really love doing that. And the business, it works really differently out here in California. Voice directors are like a whole separate thing. So like I could go in, and so if I'm directing a show, I can sit I can sit in the record session, but I'm sitting there, and the supervising director or the supervising producer, I should say. Generally, the supervising director is not necessarily there, but the supervising producer would be there, who's essentially like the head writer, right? And then you have a voice director. So you're one, two, three people back. So any contribution that you're going to give is it's got to be just certain things. I mean, honestly, I've gotten to the point where I don't even go anymore because there's no point. It's like, it's a lot of time, and I'm not getting to have that much influence over it. And really nowadays, if we have something about the way a line is read that's not working with what we need in a storyboard, we'll scratch it, and then they'll just re-record it later on, because all the voice actors have to come back and do ADR anyway after the shows are done. So I don't get to do that anymore, which is too bad, because I don't get the direct hands-on, fun of like just goofing around with these guys in the studio.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun to be able to direct all the voice actors.
Yeah, I became really good friends with some of them. I'm doing this is one of the things that I want to make sure we get in, is that I am doing a podcast. It's going to be coming out in a couple months. We're finally just about done. And my friend Sean Schindel is the main character. He was a bunch of characters, like he was Shokanabu and Biggles and different things on
Okay.
Ninja Turtles. That's how I met him. I met him in New York working on Turtles, and we just like working on stuff together. We like shot some short films and just do stuff outside of work. And then he's out here now as well. And I wanted to do this podcast. It's a narrative podcast. It's not a talking podcast like what we're doing here, but this is an actual story. So Sean does Dragon Ball. He's the Dragon Ball guy. He's Goku. So and then I was able to get Greg Abbey and Vinny Pena is the guy's name, but he's credited as Wayne Grayson on Ninja Turtles. Michelangelo.
Okay, and Raph.
Yeah, and Raphael. So they're in it too. So I've got a little mini Ninja Turtles reunion going in this thing. But yeah, so that's part of it. As I made friends with these guys, and and it's remained over the years. Which is really cool.
That's awesome. So who was like the most? Who took the most takes in the studio, and who made the most jokes, I guess?
So a lot of times the Ninja Turtles all came in together, right? So you would have Michael St. Nicholas and Greg and Vinny. What's his name? What's the guy that plays Donatello?
Sam Riegel?
Yeah, Sam Riegel. He wasn't living in New York. He lived in California, so he was on the phone. So he wasn't physically. He came out, I think, once or twice and visited us, but normally when we recorded, he was on the phone. It's like a phone patch.
Oh, so how did you get good quality?
Sam has a whole recording studio. He's a director. He's a voice director out here, so he's set up for that stuff. And he's a big voice actor too. He does all kinds of stuff. He was set up for it. But those guys together, I mean, it's just. There's no breaking it down as to who has the most jokes, because there's just so many jokes flying among them as a group. This is really fun.
That's awesome. And he also worked with Veronica Taylor and Darren Dunstan as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the thing with Darren Dunstan, and his voice does not sound like Splinter at all.
No, Darren is the completely different guy. Yeah. Of course, things have changed. Like, when we did the ancient one, it's the ancient one, right? It's Splinter's master.
No, it's Hamato Yoshi's master.
Right. Yes. The little fat guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one where I was like, should we have an Asian actor playing these characters? Mm-hmm. So I was, that's something that I wanted, was to find somebody, that was actually an Asian American actor to play the Asian American character or Asian character. I guess he's not American technically, but
So who
he
ended up
did. And
voicing him?
He was awesome. You know what? I don't even remember his name. I'd have to look it up because it's been so long. But he was fantastic.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think it
everyone's
was
really good.
Sean Schemmel.
No, Sean didn't do that. It's David Chin.
David Chen. Okay,
Yeah, and he was
nice.
cool. Yeah, everybody, the thing is, everybody there, they all did a bunch of the shows, Yu-Gi-Oh! And everything that they did, all these guys were on it. So they were always in the studio, recording, hanging out, uh, you know. So everybody knew each other really well. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Do you have any memorabilia that you've kept over the years, like storyboards or like toys or anything like that?
Well, I do have a box of the toys from uh, the Fast Forward. I grabbed up those like the what's his face, the kid. I designed him, so I was like, oh, cool! I got to get a toy of him and
Oh, Cody.
Cody,
Right.
yeah, and Serling. Got a Serling toy. So I have a bunch of those. I have all the turtles. So I have all of those because those were things that like I designed. So I was excited to have toys of them.
Which characters did you directly design? Was it like a collaboration, or did you have more influence on some of them?
Yeah, I had Cody. I designed uh, myself. Trying to think. The Shredder when they go to the future. Oh no, maybe okay. I designed the Shredder in the last season where he's a
The
digital
Cyber
guy.
Shredder. Okay.
Yeah, I designed another Shredder. I designed two of the Shredders, the later Shredders.
Oh, the Tengu Shredder. The
Yeah, it might
demon
have
one.
been. There's like a really big Shredder, like he's super like massive.
Okay.
So yeah, I did that one, and then all the others are, we had designers that would give me designs, and or I would give them roughs, or they would give me roughs. Then it's a collaboration, but I know those I went in and did myself. um, so I was always partial to them. Oh, and I did a rework of the Turtle Titan. I
Right.
wanted the Turtle Titan to be a little more streamlined, more like Batman the Animated Series kind of version of Turtle Titan.
Yeah.
So I did that one. Um,
Did you
yeah,
design
those were the
Bishop?
main ones. Bishop was already designed. Um, like I said, he was a background character. However, when we went to the future, I designed that one where he's in the white suit.
Right.
Yeah,
Because he had a pretty
yeah.
simple design in the third season. I mean, it's just a black, suit.
Yeah,
So
yeah. He wasn't just in the black suit. Wanted to keep him like a realistic kind of guy. And then the one that I designed was when he's the president. That one I did design, that suit.
who was your favorite turtle?
Man, that's a tough one. Um, it's like a split. I mean, it's like between Raphael and Michelangelo. Raphael because he's tough,
Yeah, I'm
Michelangelo
always the
because he's
same.
goofy.
I love Raph.
So, yeah, I'm kind of split. It might be. I guess if I had to pick one, it might be Raphael. You know?
Yeah, especially in the 2003 series, Raph is so badass. Like the voice acting and the design and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Greg's awesome.
Did you also find? I know in the 2003 series, all the turtles have different skin tones. Like I think Raph's is like the best shade of green. You know?
Yeah, I do remember that they wanted them to not be just one color, right? Each one of them. So there was a subtle like difference in each of their colors.
Yeah, Mikey was a little more sort of turquoise blue in some shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think Lloyd and Peter. I think that might have come from Peter that he wanted to make sure because I do remember Lloyd, specifically saying like, well, we want to change. He wants to have not change, but make sure each one is an individual and not just the same color.
Yeah, sort of distinguish them a little bit more.
Yeah,
Have you seen new takes on TMNT, like 2012 series or Rise or anything like that?
I've watched. I've watched some of them. I always like to watch just to get a sense of what they are. And I know that the which one is the CGI version? I
That's
think that's the
2012.
one. Yeah, one of them has Bishop in it.
Yeah, they
I
made
saw that
Bishop just a
online.
regular. They made him just a regular Utrom, but he's like a good guy now.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I did read about that. I was like, yeah, I would love to be able to find the episode and just see what they did with him, you know?
Yeah, honestly, I
But
wasn't a big fan
that was cool.
because in the 2012 series they made the Utroms into Krang, so they made them bad guys, and then the Utroms, like the name Utrom, became the good Krang. So Bishop was
Oh,
like the
okay.
original Utrom. He just has like a right, but his design is the exact same as 2003 because just looks like the regular guy with like shades on. And then
Right.
they also made Hun into like a Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan sort of character as well.
Oh, okay. Hunter's in there. I was excited just to know, like, okay, so Bishop is now part of uh the canon, you know, he's part of the larger universe because somebody else took him and used him in another series, you know. So now he's gone beyond us
Right.
and
Yeah.
he's really part of the Ninja Turtles, you know.
Yeah, but that was the huge contribution of the 2003 series, right?
Exactly. So I feel like that's our thing and Hun, well, Hun was I'm not 100%. Hun was from the 2003 series, right? Like he wasn't in any other incarnation,
Yeah.
was he?
Yeah. No. As far as I know, he might have
So
been
he
in the
was
comics,
one
but I think you
that
guys came up
we
with him.
came up with. And that's the thing. Yeah, I don't remember reading the comics, but of course I didn't read every Ninja Turtles comics. I was really into Ninja Turtle. Like when I was a kid, I used to collect every comic, you know, that came out. And I had the very like right from the beginning. Ninja Turtles was a big deal, right when it was a black and white comic, because nobody had ever thought like, yeah, just publish your own comic, you know. And so they did, and it was this really cool, you know, parody of like Frank Miller's Daredevil and Ronin. So yeah, I was into it from the beginning. So I have all the early ones, or I had actually in the early '90s. I sold my first issue, and at the time I got $60 for it, and I was so pleased with myself. I was like, wow, I made $60 off of a comic book that I bought.
Yeah, that's
Should
crazy.
have hung on to it though.
Yeah, that would have been worth like 2,000 now.
Yeah, that was a bad choice.
Yeah. So looking back on your career, just to close off here, do you have any like advice to any up and comers starting off in the industry?
I mean, I will say it's a commitment. You're committing a lot. If you really want to, you know, make it and work a lot, it's a lot of work. Maybe more work than you're thinking. So be prepared,
For
but be
sure.
willing to do it. You know, the reason I always felt like I can do it is that, yeah, of course I'm doing it because I got to make a living, but I'm there's the love of all this stuff, you know, that just comes from growing up on comics and animation. You know, it's like, but I love to do this. I love to draw. I love to tell stories. So the fact that someone's paying me to do it, you know, is great. So that's where you sort of get the energy from.
So you feel like it's
But
worth the struggle?
yeah, totally. And I feel like things have improved a lot in the industry in terms of like, they're spending more money. There's a bigger support system when you're making a show, you know, because I was describing to you how bare bones everything was on Turtles. It's not like that so much anymore, you know, so that's good. But, yeah, I recommend it. It's a exciting way to make a living if you want to be an artist, you know, pays the bills.
For sure. Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Are you working on anything new now? And let just plug anything you want.
Yeah, well, in terms of animation, I am working on some shows. Unfortunately, they haven't come out yet. Well, actually, they did announce this show, Grimsburg. I've done a couple of primetime comedies now, and one that I'm going to be coming out this year. I'm a director on is called Grimsburg, which that stars John Hamm, and that's just you know, it's a primetime Fox comedy, but rather than trying to be a one of these, you know, sitcom type deals, this one is like, well, what if we took that idea, but now we're trying to do cop shows, mystery shows, you know, like Twin Peaks or, you know, Fargo, you know, that kind of thing. But we do the parody of that, and it's a really unique show. So I think people really like that one. And then on my own, I'm like I said, I'm gonna have the podcast coming out in a few months. It's called Background Anger, stars Sean Schimmel, and there's a little Tmnt reunion in that one. I just don't have an exact release date yet. It's probably March or April, but it'll be out there. And then I have a Substack, and so it's just my name, Burdine.substack.com, and I'm doing comics on there. This is something that my first love, and I found an artist to draw it because I'm too busy. There came a time when I realized, I'm never going to get any of my own stories out there if I'm going to insist on drawing them because I'm too busy with my animation work. So I found a great artist, and it's about a group of kids that are brought back to life. They've all died, been brought back to life, and in this house, and there's this lady who tells them, "Hey, second chance at life. You can do anything you want. Only catch is in the basement of this place. There's a doorway. You can go back to your previous lives. But I'm just warning you not to do it, because it could be bad consequences." So it's sort of like a Garden of Eden in the sense that they can have this infinite one in life. They're taken care of as a second chance at life, as long as they don't give in and try and go back to their former lives and resolve the issues of their former lives. And it's, that struggle and what happens when ultimately they decide, it's a pretty hard apple not to take a bite of, right? So that's the story. So yeah, I'd love for everybody to go there, and they're free, it's free to read. I put out one every week, and I'm gonna have some new strips coming up pretty soon. I've been working with a couple other artists. It's kind of like my side thing now. I realized at a certain point, I want to tell my own stories, and for all these years, I would draw a few pages. I'd have a great idea, write out all the work, script them. Then it'd take me years just to draw a few pages, and then finally realize, like, it's never going to happen if I draw it. I got to find guys that'll do it, and pay them, just like these guys pay you to do animation. And so that's what I'm doing, which is a lot of fun. It's just fun too when you work with someone else. Keeps it fresh.
For sure, for sure. Awesome. This has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, it was fun.
Roy Burdine, everybody.